80 years ago, people accused Pope Pius XII, and today's detractors do the same. This helps us understand why there is so much aversion toward this pope. Both the Nazis from 80 years ago and today's accusers have a common goal: to destroy the moral authority of the papacy. They believe that by attacking the integrity of When Pius XI died in 1939, the Nazis repudiated any prospect of Pacelli being elected his successor. Nazi fascist political pressure was exerted on the cardinals to prevent his election, but it was all in vain. In March 1939, Cardinal Pacelli was elected pope, and he chose the same name as his predecessor as a message to the Nazis that the papacy's anti-Nazi stance continued. The day after Pacelli's election as pope, on March 3, 1939, the German newspaper Berliner Morgenpost wrote, "The election of Cardinal Pacelli is not accepted favorably in Germany, as he has always been hostile to National Socialism." Unfortunately, the joy over the election of a strong pope who would continue Pius XI's challenge to the Nazis was overshadowed by the terrible political situation in Europe that year. War finally broke out on September 1, 1939, when German troops invaded Poland. 2 days later, as is well known, the British and French declared war on Germany. A month after the outbreak of World War II, Cardinal Pacelli, now Pope Pius XII, issued his first encyclical, Summi Pontificatus, which called on all people of goodwill to oppose two pernicious errors, racism and the totalitarian state. The Pope made his position clear, saying that the Nazis had abandoned the cross of Christ for another that brought only death. Detractors of Pope Pius claim that during World War II, he was always silent in the face of Adolf Hitler's aggression, but the reality is that the Pope was far from silent, though he was certainly cautious. Today, it is easy to be a Monday morning quarterback and wish the Pope had issued a lot of propagandist statements against the Nazis. But the Pope realized this was not a sensible option if he truly wanted to save Jewish lives. And nothing illustrates the scenario of the time better than examples. In August 1942, a papal letter to be read in all churches in Poland was delivered to Archbishop of Krakow Adam Sapieha. The content of the letter was a declaration of solidarity and a clear denunciation of the Nazis. However, Sapieha wisely lamented, "For the love of God, it is impossible for me to forward this letter to my priests, much less read it aloud. If just one copy of this letter falls into the hands of the SS, all our heads will roll." Sapieha then burned the letter and sent a message to the Pope: "It torments me deeply not to be able to transmit your Holiness's letter to our faithful, but it would serve as a pretext for further persecution." In contrast to the Polish Church, the Dutch Church paid a very high price for its lack of caution. In July 1942, a pastoral letter inspired by the Pope and signed by Dutch Catholic bishops and a group of leaders of Reformed Protestant churches was read from the pulpits of all Dutch Catholic churches. Within a week, the Nazis retaliated by sending 40,000 Jews to Auschwitz, including all Jews who had converted to Catholicism, among them Edith Stein, canonized as Saint Teresa Benedicta of the Cross. The Archbishop of Utrecht, Johannes de Jong, later lamented, "If I had remained silent and not protested, all these Jewish Catholics would still be alive." Joseph Lichten, a Polish Jew and director of the Intercultural Division of the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith, argued that it was wise for the Pope not to speak out more vehemently against Nazi persecutions because anything, according to Joseph, could make things even worse for the Jews. Thus, we understand the prudent and cautious attitude of Pope Pius XII, as he did not want to seek the applause of the civilized world and, with it, fame for future generations at the cost of compromising the blood of innocent people. But the point is that even the accusation of the Pope's supposed silence is not entirely true. In his annual Christmas radio speeches, the Pope regularly condemned the barbarity committed by the Nazis. An editorial in the New York Times in 1941 declared the following about Pope Pius: "The voice of Pius is a lonely voice. He is practically the only ruler left on the European continent who dares to raise his voice." He left no doubt that Nazi goals are also irreconcilable with his own conception of Christian peace. A little-known fact is that on several occasions, Hitler ordered Pius to be kidnapped and members of the Curia executed. Although Hitler was convinced not to proceed with these orders, the Pope prepared for the worst. When the Allies liberated Rome, thousands of Jews came out of hiding and told the world about their rescue by the Vatican. The weekly newspaper Detroit Jewish News published the following tribute as early as July 7, 1944. One of the most moving testimonies to the courageous stance of Pius XII was given by a Jew who was, in fact, the chief rabbi of Rome, Israel Zolli. In his autobiography, Before the Dawn, he recounts that as the leader of the Jewish community during the Nazi occupation of Rome, he was a contemporary witness to both the pressures exerted on his people and the actions of the Pope and the Catholics under his command. After the war, he even converted to Christianity and adopted the baptismal name Eugenio in honor of Pope Pius, whose baptismal name was Eugenio Pacelli. His wife also converted and adopted the name Eugenia. Zolli then wrote the book that records his personal path to conversion, in which he described Pius XII's figure, his courage as a leader of his faithful, and the selflessness of those who generously risked or gave their lives to help their fellow human beings. He described them in the following terms: no hero in history commanded an army in such a way, none is more combative, more fought, none more heroic than the one led by Pius XII in the name of Christian charity. When Pius XII died in 1958, Israel's foreign minister Golda Meir wrote the following: when the dreadful martyrdom befell our people during the decade of Nazi terror, the voice of the Pope was raised for the victims. I could go on for hours citing the words of gratitude from Jews directed at the Catholic Church and Pope Pius. But to conclude, I will cite the words of the most well-known Jewish figure of the 20th century, Albert Einstein: only the Catholic Church protested against Hitler's attack on freedom. Until then, I had no interest in the Church, but today I feel a great admiration for the Church, the only one that had the courage to fight for spiritual truth and moral freedom. Thus, it becomes entirely clear that Pope Pius is one of the most unjustly slandered figures. Many accuse him of silence or even sympathy for Hitler. But those who say this are dishonest or, at the very least, ignorant and know nothing about what they are talking about. Pius XII was actually one of the first prominent world figures to denounce how pernicious Nazism was. He was the only Western leader who courageously stood up against the Nazi power. It was his courage and moral integrity that motivated the entire army of Catholic faithful and clergy to act against the tyranny of the Nazi extermination program, putting their own lives and the lives of their families at risk. Anyway, like if you enjoyed, comment below with your opinion, suggestion, or constructive criticism, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive notifications of upcoming content. Equally important is becoming a channel member, which is a very important direct funding tool, and of course, only sign up if you want to and if that money won't make a difference to you, okay? But if you enjoy this content, it helps me a lot to continue producing these videos. Moreover, the names of channel supporters are always displayed at the end of each video. Thanks a lot to you who are already a supporter, you have no idea the difference it makes. A big hug, stay with God, and see you in the next video.